Hello, Folsom. My name is Gul Khan, and today is going to be our first session of the many series of the series that we have for discussing the issues that Folsom has. We call this Folsom Insight, that will give you some details exactly what are the issues the Folsom is facing. So let's start on that one. We have many issues right now Folsom is facing. And one of them is the fiscal budgets, fiscal responsibility, and a Measure G. Currently that we have is, we're going to talk about the issues that the Folsom is facing fiscally. And for that, there is a proposed measure for 1% increase in sales tax for Folsom. So for that one, I have my guest with me, Bruce Cline. Thank you very much for coming to our forum, and welcome aboard today.
Great, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. This is super important to hear, let people really understand the issues, and I applaud you for getting this out there.
No problem. So let's start with this notion that why it is important. Why sales tax is important, and tell us that where we stand in our current budget.
Sure. If you could, let me tell you a little bit about my background.
Sure.
I've been in town 34 years. I have grandchildren here. I started my career as a police officer, went to law school, was a lawyer. I was a city attorney here for about 16 years. And so seen a lot of details about the city and understand a good bit about what it is. And so we came to this issue because we principally from parks and trails. I'm on the board of Friends of Folsom Parkway, an organization that's been around 34 years advocating for trails and from trails and open space. And we saw that there was no money going to trails or parks in our community, the prized amenities. So we kicked this conversation off about a year ago. And as we met with people and we met with groups and we invited people to come into forums to teach them and to have them teach us what the issues were, ultimately we came to the conclusion that sales tax measure was, one, absolutely necessary for our community, and two, the manner in which it is a special sales tax, and I'll talk more in detail about that. But that's the background about how we got here. So you asked about the budget, and the City Council this last Tuesday adopted a budget. And usually when a budget gets adopted, it's a little bit of a cause for some celebration, I guess. In this particular case, it's not a cause for celebration. Our city is significantly financially troubled in many, many, many areas. And the city manager has been talking about this issue for about 6 years. Each budget message, she talks about the challenges that are facing our city in trying to keep up. And so, as I mentioned, parks and trails, no money going to parks. Renovation, no money going to trails at all. We have 9 fewer police officers than we did in 2008. Fortunately, this last budget, the city added 3 new police officer positions. Fabulous. They actually added 6, but 3 new ones funded by the general fund. Great news, but we're still way down on where we should be for police officers.
And we have more population increased.
That's right. About 16,000 more population.
Yeah.
Firefighters. We cut Station 35, which is the main fire station right by Walmart on Glen Drive. That crew was cut during the Great Recession. 9 firefighters lost jobs. That has never come back. That fire station serves the historic district and the central business district. So that means the fire personnel come from further away. And that exists in all departments. So very, very challenging. And so what happened in this budget that was just adopted, that the city council, out of a $117 million general fund budget, $117 million, the council had $1.7 million to work with. That's it. It may sound like a fair amount to work with, but it's a staggeringly small number given what challenges that the city faces. The manager has said on multiple occasions, and the departments have said on multiple occasions, that there are probably $20 million worth of deferred maintenance, parks, trails, city facilities that simply cannot be funded at all. And what I guess I would ask your viewers to look at is the city documents that are put out. And it's a little challenging to look at some of those city documents, but there is one that was put out on February, I want to say it was February 9th of 2024. And that budget document was the first start of discussions about the budget and gave the departments their opportunity to outline what was necessary, what they believed the essential services were that were necessary. And that's where it gets really staggering when you look at parks, police, fire, streets. All of those areas, virtually all of those areas not funded. Sorry, I'm talking a long time and probably should let you ask a few questions.
That's great. Actually, this is really what we needed. As a resident of Folsom, that we do need that information, that how much deficit we are going to be in, how much money we actually need to balance our budget. So let's start with that one. And so now let's jump onto the actual topic and talk about the elephant in the room. What is Measure G?
Sure. Measure G is a measure that will be on the ballot in November. This is a citizen-initiated special sales tax measure. And the group of citizens collected over 8,000 signatures to get this on the ballot. Why is it a citizens initiated? It's because our group, with help from a lot of input from a lot of people, crafted this measure, which will be basically an ordinance that will be put into effect. And what it does is it raises the sales tax rate by 1%, or 1 penny on the dollar, to equal the same rate that exists in every other city in Sacramento County except Citrus Heights. Every other city has had to do this, unfortunately. When we went to craft this measure, many people were very concerned about simply having it as a general tax. The difference between a general tax and a special tax is a special tax can only be used for specified purposes, specific things, and I'll talk about that. A general tax is, okay, here's the money, city, go spend it. We trust that you'll do that. We found, talking to person after person after person, that they do not trust government. I personally know that our city has been good fiscal stewards, and I can talk about some of the steps that they took over time. But we've seen at the state level and the federal level significant waste, and people do not trust government to be good stewards of their money. So we crafted this special sales tax measure with 6 specific categories. And the revenue that's generated, which raises the level again to 8.75%, the revenue generated must go to police, 20%, fire, 20%, parks and trails, 15%, roadway, pothole repair, things like that, and stormwater, 15%. economic development special projects, and it's important to talk about that, 15%, and then capital projects, so infrastructure, things like that. So the money has to go, absolutely has to go to those and cannot be used for anything else. And it must stay in Folsom, only in Folsom, doesn't go to the county, doesn't go to the state. We get that money to use for our essential services.
Let's take a step back. How much is the tax as of now, just for the benefit of the users, the viewers? How much is the tax we are paying in Folsom right now, the residents? And what's going to be the tax, total tax that we will be paying if the measure is approved?
Sure, great question. Two pieces. First off, so you asked the question about what is the sales tax rate now and what is it proposed to go to. I think it's important to back up first and really understand sales tax of 7.75. 7.75 is what our sales tax is now. The minimum, the statewide minimum is 7.25%. In the county, we have a half-cent Measure A, which goes for transportation. So everywhere in the county gets that. So basically call the minimum 7.75%. What people really don't understand is of that 7.75%, the city gets 1 penny of that. The state gets the rest, and the county gets that half cent. I mean, that's what's so staggering, is that all this money gets paid in. The state of California gets all that money. We do not. So we survive on that 1 penny per dollar. And then if you buy online, if you go on Amazon or other online shoppers, then we get a fraction of that penny. So when you hear these shop local programs, that's very important. Shop local. So we get all that penny. But if you shop online, we get a fraction of that. And that's really what has killed sales tax in Folsom and all other cities. So what we are proposing, like other cities have done, Elk Grove, Rancho, Roseville, we've raised the sales tax to 8.75. That 1 extra penny per dollar or 1%, we get it all. And in our case, in this measure, all that money goes to the specified services that I talked about: police, fire, parks, economic development, roads, and capital projects. Can't be used for anything else. Can't be used to enhance pensions. Can't be sucked away and disappeared into some pet project that a council member may come up with. It's got to be used for the essential services that are right now significantly revenue deprived.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the current tax that we are receiving, the sales tax, out of 7.75%, we receive only 1 penny, which means that is the 1% penny on the dollar we are receiving right now. And correct me if I'm wrong, the number last time I saw during the budget meeting was about $29 million was that, or close to that.
That's correct.
And
it'll generate $29 million anticipated first year.
Correct. And then that is $29 million that we are even collecting right now. And then with this 1 penny on the dollar increase, we would be receiving that 1 penny on the dollar, $29 million additional.
That's correct.
Okay. Now let's talk about why $29 million we need it. As per our last budget proposed, and then now it is adopted by the city manager, we have $5.25 million deficit we are expecting in the next 5 years. If we are okay in 5 years, $5.25 million, why do we need to generate $29 million?
Sure. So what you're referring to, Gul, is the structural deficit that the manager talks a lot about. And so if I could just make sure that we understand, The manager proposes a budget, the council approves it. So the council approved the budget. So each year, there is a gap between the amount of revenue coming in and the services necessary to meet that. And so each year, as the manager's budget had, the first year, $1.1 million. So you've got to adjust services to meet that 1.1 million. Then the next year, it's 2 million. The next year, it's 3 million. The next year, down the road, it's 5 million, as you described. So that's a cumulative number. But the big question is, all that does is to have the same level of service that we have now, which is a poor level of service. It doesn't do anything at all to solve the problems that I've been referring to. It doesn't buy one extra police officer. It doesn't buy one extra firefighter. It puts no money into parks. The manager or the Parks and Rec director, Kelly Gonzalez, described $2.5 million of work necessary to solve issues on trails alone. Nothing for it. No money in the budget for parks renovation. No money for trail renovation. And so we heard some of the folks from the soccer groups and youth sports come and talk about the absolutely horrible condition of our fields now. We used to be, the envy of all, and those fields are not even playable for tournament play. No grass field is playable. So the point being, in order to keep the status quo, which is poor, that you've got to come up with that money. So back to the answer to your question is $29 million across the board will solve our problem in terms of getting additional officers, getting the firefighters back that we need, renovating our parks, which we now have of 30 parks, we have 30 parks that are over 20 years old in terms of playground structures. They have to be replaced. It's sort of like having your house, meeting your bills each month, yet not doing anything at all to do any repairs. You're not fixing your AC. You're not patching your roof. You're not painting the house.
Living paycheck to paycheck.
That's exactly what we are doing, Gul. Very good analogy. That is exactly what we're doing. And it's probably worse than that, because every year that you don't renovate a park, that condition gets worse. And then it costs more to fix it. Same with the aquatic center. Our library now is only open 5 days a week. Used to be open 6.5 days a week. So if we want to keep Folsom the quality community that we all believe in, again, I've been here 34 years and I love this town. And that's why we're all volunteering to do this thing for this community.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that one as well, that who started it and why Bruce?
Yeah.
Why not city council took any initiative or anybody else?
Brilliant question, Gul. Really brilliant. Sometimes I ask myself that, and my wife asked me this question, and my son asked me that question. And what we did was we watched these council meetings, again from the parks perspective, and said, there's no money going to it. When is this council going to do something and act? And so the concern was, political times, I guess, council not wanting to bring a sales tax measure forward. And they had a sales tax measure attempted in 2018. It was propped up, and then they basically walked away from it. In 2022, there was insufficient votes on the council to do it. So we watched and said, look, we support law enforcement, we support fire, we support parks and trails. Something has to be done. So we started this. And then I think the council just started watching what this citizens group was doing. So he asked who's behind it. It started out really with two folks, Robert Goss, who was a former Parks and Rec director, and myself, inviting people to come. People from the chamber, police, fire, zoo, any Folsom Athletic Association. Folsom Athletic Association represents 6,000 families in our community. And, they know what the condition of these parks are. So we got a lot of input from a lot of people. And that's how it got created. Now, in a perfect world, other cities have had the council put a general tax on. Part of the problem, though, is, we have council members, and rightfully so, said, I will not support a general tax. I'll support a special tax. I will not support a general because of the reasons I described earlier. They don't want just this general fund dump. And so we created this special tax, and once they saw that the momentum was starting to go and that, boy, these folks can actually succeed in getting this on the ballot, I think the feeling then was, well, why should we interfere if the citizens are taking action to do this?
Great.
In a perfect world, would we not be doing this and I'd be enjoying it? Well, okay, maybe so. But bottom line is we're here. We care about our community. We don't get paid a doggone dime for it. People say, well, why are you doing this? I mean, you must have some motive here. It's like, sorry, there is no motive other than we care about our town. And
this is a great town. This is a great town. This is a great town to raise a family. I moved here many years ago and decided to raise my family here. And I'm glad if I have to do it all over again, I'll do it again.
Yeah. Well, you raise a great point. And one of the beauties of this measure has been able to talk to people. I mean, 8,000 signatures, you've talked to a lot of people, thousands and thousands. We met at the mosque. I got an opportunity to go there, and I spoke there. We've spoken in the East area, in Folsom Ranch, and met people who are so excited to be in our town, have that same feeling in our town like I had when I moved here 34 years ago with my 1-year-old son and raised our kids here. It is a great place, but it is suffering, and we have to do something about it. If we do not do something about it, then the quality of life that we expect in our town will go down. The manager said it multiple times. There will be sacrifices that have to be made if we don't have a revenue measure.
Okay, thank you. This is great. I want to actually come back to that. How did we get there? But before I do that, I want to emphasize a little bit on economic impact of that. How is this going to impact our local businesses?
Sure. Well, there's lots of studies that say, they call it sales tax avoidance. And people don't go out searching for, the lowest sales tax rate. They're not going to drive to Roseville to save a half a cent. They're looking for where the best shops are, what the best services are, and that's where they shop. And all the rest of the local communities, individual cities have, again, already have that 8.75% tax. Come from the Bay Area, holy smokes, they're 9.75, 10.5. Pleasanton's proposing to go to 10.5.
10.5, yeah.
We hope we never see that, and we think we have things built into our measure so that we will not be there. So we don't think that it's harmful to businesses, cost you a little bit more and emphasize a little bit more. The reality is that if you spend $15,000 on taxable goods in Folsom as a family, or 20, you spend $15,000 on taxable goods, the total extra cost, the whole total extra cost for a year for that family is $150.
Okay.
1%.
That's a good number.
1% of 15,000 is $150 all in extra cost. That buys us police, fire, parks. The other thing, Gul, is that 40% of our sales tax is generated by people who come and visit us. So people who use our roads, call our police officers, go to our parks, enjoy our amenities, they will help invest in our community. They will help pay for the things that I've been talking about. And that's a huge deal. Because when we were out collecting signatures, we could be at the Aquatic Center, Andy Moran Sports Complex, Castle Park. I'm telling you, 50% plus people at any of those facilities are from out of town, and they come here. Library, same deal. And it's staggering how many come and visit us. So let's let them, other folks who we want to come into our town, we want them to eat in our restaurants, let's let them also help support the quality of life that we all expect here.
So I want to talk about a little bit, you mentioned about the people shopping online.
Yes.
Now, that is, I don't think so that trend is going to change ever. People are going to continue to shop online.
I agree.
How do we handle that? And if that trend continues, do we have any alternate solution?
Well,
Or before you answer that, just want to add one more thing to my question is that if we continue to go down that path, people start going more online shopping and less local shopping, are we at a risk of losing more revenue that we are still, at the moment, we are getting from the state and county?
absolutely. So you raised a couple questions. One is the sales tax trend. So there's two. So what's happened on the sales tax? We had a fairly steady growth of sales tax up until about 2019, started just before the pandemic. 17 was our max, stayed about the same through 18, 19. Then we get into the pandemic, sales tax declined. Why did it decline? People are buying online. And so the sales tax trend line pretty much flattened out until this year. This year, it is now less. It's projected to be less than we got last year. So you are absolutely right. I don't expect this trend to change. The city manager has talked about from their sales tax consultants that they don't expect that trend to change. So why is it important from a special sales tax? When you adopt a special sales tax or a supplemental tax, like all these other cities have done, we get every single extra penny, whether it's shopping online or at a brick and mortar store. So if I go to Amazon and I'm buying a baseball, 1 penny per dollar extra, we get it all with a supplemental tax. Go to Dick's Sporting Goods, buy the same baseball, we get that 1 full penny. So that is what the beauty of having a supplemental tax is, that we get all that and can get around this grab that has occurred from the online shopping.
Okay, so just to clarify, if I go online right now, if this measure is approved, and I buy a bunch of stuff from Amazon, which cost me $100, and I get that one, so it means, am I gonna get $10 out of that? The city of Folsom is gonna get $10 out of that 100?
You got $1.
Well, $1
Yeah,
out of that
yeah.
100?
Right, that's correct. And versus now, we get a fraction of that $1. But so we'll get a fraction of the $1 from the first, but the new supplemental tax, we get all of that dollar, whether it's online shopping or in-person shopping. So we want to support our local businesses.
Correct.
Supporting our local businesses does more than just send sales tax. It employs people. It provides quality of good experiences to go to. So we don't want to just say, oh, now we have a good excuse to shop online. But the reality is things have changed. online shopping, and people are doing things differently. They're shopping for more experiences. They're looking for more experiences. The trends have changed. The per capita sales tax generation is the lowest it's been. So we've got to do something about it, because the city depends on property tax and sales tax. That's the bulk of what drives a city. And when you have sales tax declining, the only answer to that is declining services, or changing or cutting, declining services, cutting, or finding an alternate revenue method.
And how do we make sure that it does not have any negative impact on our local businesses? I'm a big proponent of supporting the local businesses. I am a local business owner as well in Folsom. So I'm concerned about it. That how is that going to impact my business or any other local business here in Folsom?
Yeah. I think the answer to that is people understand that that's what's necessary if you want to have a safe community. I think the bigger impact is if we don't do something and we don't have police officers to address some of this, criminal element of the homeless population. If we have poor roads, if we have parks that aren't playable, if we can't attract teams to come here and rent fields to play soccer on, that I think is more of an impact and a bigger black eye than a 1 penny on a dollar, 1% sales tax. Again, the studies show that people don't just avoid going to some place because they're now having to pay an extra penny. They just don't. If it was a 500, 600% increase, maybe they'd be willing to drive a little bit further. But there's a value of your time, and there's value of I suppose it's value of your time and your gas money,
and
etc.
gas.
Yeah.
Yep. And are there any exceptions to this one, like grocery shopping? That you don't have to pay extra tax, or prescription medicine?
Sure.
Anything?
Yeah. So I wouldn't call them exceptions on this tax. That's an exception on sales tax generally. So you go to Rayleigh's or Safeway, you don't pay sales tax on groceries that you buy. You don't pay it on services when you go to a nail salon, let's say. You don't pay it on medicine, but you do pay it on, you go to a restaurant and have a beer, you're going to pay sales tax on that.
Yeah.
So that's the issue is you have a certain amount of discretion about what you're going to buy or choose to buy. And the big things that we consume on a daily basis in our household, many of those are not taxable.
And that is going to continue to.
That's correct.
be the
It
case.
doesn't change at all.
That doesn't change.
That's
Okay,
correct.
that's a good to know, because that's very important for everyone to know before you vote, that we are paying taxes on what, and what are the things that are going to change. One of my main concern has always been that before I vote on anything, I need to know how is that going to impact my life.
Absolutely.
So people have a right to know that if they go to Winco or Costco and then buy grocery shopping over there, and then any groceries, they are not paying any sales tax. After this measure is passed, people are going to pay more tax on that one or not?
They do not. That doesn't change at all. What you
rules
buy
change.
today that's taxable still remains taxable. What's not taxable, again, like I said, food, medicines, services, not taxable.
Yep. Before I go to another topic on the accountability, I want to ask you one thing, which many people, when I talk to a lot of people, and I do talk to a lot of people on a daily basis, the citizens of Folsom, this is a regressive tax. How are we justifying that, or is that worth it? That's the question.
Sure. So a regressive tax, just for purposes of definition, a regressive tax impacts lower income people they pay the same rate that a wealthy person does.
That is correct.
So that's when we talk about a regressive tax. What I say is that the individuals at lower socioeconomic means, lower wage people, they're impacted the most when services are taken away. If you have a lot of money and all of a sudden the aquatic center is down, well, you go to a club, many of the private clubs in town.
Yeah.
And a person of lower income does not have that ability to do that. When we want to play in our parks and ride on our trails, which of course are free, and we want to enjoy walking around on our beautiful tree canopy trails, everyone at every socioeconomic level can do that. Library is a great example. I mentioned already that the library is only open 5 days a week. Used to be open 6.5. It was reduced during the recession. The library routinely puts into their budget request to add an extra day. So I'm not suggesting that the library hours are going to be cut further, but what I'm saying is that people at lower economic levels have those services available. They have a safe community by having police officers and firefighters be able to respond to them. And so, there is a cost to live in a great community like Folsom. And when I go back to my example that I said earlier, let's say a lower socioeconomic person spends $5,000 on taxable goods in Folsom, not everywhere else, but in Folsom, that total extra cost for that family is $50 a year.
Okay.
Not insignificant, perhaps, to a family that's at that economic level, but still, if we want to assure safety, if we want to assure good quality parks for the kids to play in, make sure our aquatic center is open, make sure our zoo is there, I think $50 a year is a good investment to live in a place like Folsom is.
I always say that the fact that this tax stays in Folsom, that's a good part. Because yes, it is a regressive tax, but at the same time, it's an investment not only in yourself, but for your kids and your grandkids.
That's right.
Important.
Yeah. I mean, do we think the state will take care of us? Do we think the county is going to take care of us? The answer is no. I mean, plain and simple, no. So we have to take care of ourselves, and that's where we come from. I mean, we have very conservative people on our committee who would never want to utter the T word, but know the value, the T word, tax, but they know the value of Folsom and say, absent knowing where it's going and that I'm going to get my money and I know where it's going to be spent, then it's okay. That I will swallow that pill so I can make sure I live in this unique town.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's jump on to a little bit on what you touched earlier is as well, that people don't trust government. That's one of the main issues. We just saw that during our latest budget adoption meeting this last Tuesday. And I was almost at the verge of, okay, this budget may not be adopted. And then finally it got adopted. So we do have a lot of differences within the council members. Among the council members, they are not really agreeing to each other. They have different priorities. Now, the citizens are going to be concerned that I'm giving you $29 million, go and spend. And then your council members are not really agreeing on that one. How are we making sure there is a proper accountability and oversight on this budget that we are collecting or the extra money that we are collecting?
Sure. Great questions. So first off, the measure absolutely requires by law that it can only be spent in Folsom and only for the specified categories. I've talked about that: police, fire, parks, etc. Cannot be used for anything else other than those categories. So when you hear people say, well, they're just going to move it and they're going to use it for other things, they either, one, are not telling you the truth, or two, they haven't read the measure. I think probably they're not trying to lie to you. They just haven't read it. And they've seen this song heard the song sung before. It's happened in many cities where they promise the moon, and then all of a sudden, 2 years later, what the heck happened to my money? So that's why we said, gotta be for police, has to be for fire, has to be for parks, in those categories. And if it's not spent in that category, it stays in that category and used for another year. For example, police. They're renting space across from the existing police station because they're in a police facility that's over 30 years old, well over 30 years old, and they've outgrown that facility. It's old, and so they're renting space, which makes no sense. This measure passes, you could utilize capital funds and you could utilize police funds to buy the facility that they're operating. That's one of the things that was in the police department's budget, $5 million. Well, they could buy that.
So you mentioned that we know that in the measure that it says that it has to be spent like that. Who will ensure that it is going to be like that?
Very good. Probably should have hit that. So there is an annual audit that's required, independent annual audit that's required. Then there's a citizens oversight committee. And you'll hear people say, well, that's just stacked up with a bunch of cronies from the council members, or that's just a bunch of city employees. Well, there will be a couple city employees for sure, police, fire, and finance, because they know that issue. But beyond that, there has to be a representative from youth sports, a representative from the business community, a representative that represents streets and stormwater. Then there's a couple at-large positions. Those are appointed by the council. But unlike what's ever happened before, this oversight committee is open to the public. They have to produce a report showing money in and money out. So they're accountable also. Then they make recommendations as to what it gets spent on. Of course, ultimately, it's the council's decision. And many people don't go to the council meetings, but at least you've got 9 people who have produced a report in advance of the budget suggesting where that money ought to be spent, what the highest priorities are based on community input, and what did you use this precious tax money for? Did you spend it on a sky slide in Rodeo Park? Well, that wouldn't be allowed under the measure. But did you assure that it was being used? The other part to your question is, a lot of people ask, well, they're just going to move money around. Well, there's a provision called a no supplantation provision. And that means that the budget in the police department gets to stay fixed at the 23-24 level, unless there was an emergency declared by the council on a 4/5 vote. But they can't, what I call it, playing teeter-totter. They can't say, well, geez, you got some more money over here, so we're going to reduce you over here. And we're going to take this money and move it somewhere else. That is not allowed under the measure. Very clear as to what people wanted. So games can't be played. But I guess the biggest issue is, unlike any other time, you get this you can go to that oversight committee, you can sit down, you can see the reports, and you will know how much money came in and what the money was spent on. So, excuse me, we like that feature a lot. Very taxpayer protection measure.
So this committee,
excuse me.
you need water?
Thank you.
This committee or oversight committee, first of all, you're going to have multiple committees. Is that right?
They're what, sorry?
There are going to be multiple committees. Or you're going to have one committee
It's one committee made of 9 people.
9 people.
And then they would have multiple meetings.
Multiple meetings
Yes.
for every single criteria that police, fire, park and rec, every single one of them is going to be
That's
like
correct.
that. Okay. How much accountability this committee has towards the public? So I, as a citizen, as a resident of Folsom, if I want to just go, hey, this committee is not doing its job, how do we make sure that they do their job well?
Sure. Well, like any committee, they're appointed by the council. So the council, people can submit their names and say, I'd like to serve on the committee, and I happen to have an engineering background, so I'd like to be the person to represent streets and stormwater. And so the citizens get to watch the interaction, give their input to the committee, see the report that's prepared, and if they don't like what they see, then they ought to say to the council, one, that guy's never come into the meeting, and or that person has no input, or they appear to just have one bent and they're not listening, and people get removed. Occasionally that happens. People think it's a great idea and then they don't serve. Well, then the council replaces them.
Got it. Okay. So we are going to just stick to this one, and then we will go in our second session. Probably we'll go a little bit deeper into more, kind of look into the alternate solutions and things like that. But just want to emphasize for the benefit of everyone who's watching right now, Bruce is the face of that, what you call it, Citizens Action Committee right now for 1%.
I hate to say the face of it, but I'm one of many committee members. I happen to be the co-chair. So yes,
there you go.
We started as Folsom Takes Action. Now it's yes on Measure G.
Folsom Takes Action. Now it's yes on Measure G. That's the one. That's the committee that we have, and they are. He just explained in detail what Measure G is, why is it needed, how much it's gonna be the impact of that, and then how do we make sure that this money is not being spent on anything else. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments about it, you think that there is more information that is needed, please do comment on this one. We would love to have welcome and love to hear your voice, see what we can ask more questions to Bruce, and maybe he would have more answers to us as well. Thank you very much, Bruce, for your time today. We would continue this one.
Sure, thanks. I would also recommend Folsom Takes Action has a website. So Folsom Takes Action, you can Google it, pull it up. But if you don't believe us, then you should look at the city's website. So the city has a website, and that, let me make sure I get the exact name for it. If you were to just go to folsom.ca.us, and I think they call it fiscal focus. They can't advocate, by law, they can't advocate for a tax measure. They can educate, whether it's their measure or somebody else's. But you can go and look at the facts as they describe too. So that's what we want people to do, just like you're doing, Gul, is educating people on this issue and then making their mind up.
All right, that is the job. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching this one. We will continue and come back with the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.